People near the coast should evacuate immediately.
Houses are collapsing.
Israel may bomb Iran.
If I was Iran, I would be trying to get nuclear weapons.
Well, America itself was the first nation ever to use nuclear weapons.
More than 600 people are now confirmed dead. They died because they listened to the governor.
Who is here to help us already? We can't do nothing.
We're headed for an economic train wreck.
Does the dollar get destroyed, or is every currency going to get destroyed?
A series of demonstrations against corporate greed.
Keep moving, please. Get out of the way.
Some civilians can be stopped on the street with very little actual suspicious cause.
China. Do you fear China, or do we need China?
Because the extra low frequency waves drill deep into your brain.
The sun has a temper tantrum.
The faces, but it doesn't end there. If there were an electromagnetic problem,
It could mean the end of life as we know it.
It is obvious why the world is so stressed and humanity suffers as it does.
You look in what's circled in the center, you can see a smiley face.
Do we care? Do we have a moral compass anymore?
I visualized Killing Joke before Killing Joke actually happened. There was a stage, an anonymous band emitting sounds of a primeval world. It was like a generator. And there was no applause, there was only dispersal. The musicians were like insects. So I was standing in the dole queue about to sign on, and there's this Indian guy in front of me. And he went, "Hi, my name's Carlos." And I said, "Oh, my name's Jazz. I've come to London to form a band." He goes, "I know, and I'm going to introduce you to the drummer who lives in my house."
I was already playing with the band, met Jazz and got him to come and play. And then, unfortunately, we both bailed just before a gig, which I'll eternally feel bad about. But, you know, needs must when the devil pees in your kettle.
The second I set eyes on Paul's face, we both knew, like, destiny had struck us. And it was kind of mutual repulsion. We're sort of discussing, well, how are we going to meet two other guys who not only have a revolutionary style of playing, but they also have a right side of brain capacity to understand philosophy and understand wider ideas. Or just said, magic. At that time, I didn't know that Paul knew anything about magic. He was well versed in ceremonial magic and Rosicrucianism, Golden Dawn system. He had a very good understanding of the Kabbalah, of the mystery traditions, and indeed the secret history of the world. By that time, speaking for myself, I had already studied Wicca, ceremonial magic, and when I discovered that he'd basically been on the same path as me, that was it.
It was our mutual interest in all things occult or spiritual that gave us the connection to think that we could do something musically that might channel what we were exploring.
On the 26th of February, 3 o'clock, 1979, Paul and myself executed the ritual of dedication to locate the other two individuals.
We painted the floor black and drew the circle on the pentagram, aligned it to the cardinal points, as one does, one should do. We did a banishing ritual, stated our intentions, did an invocation. I mean, amateur and basic stuff, but it apparently turned out to be quite powerful. We, unbeknown to ourselves, were invoking fire, and the flat burned down.
And the temple burnt down because they got their navigation compass points wrong. So they weren't that adept at their art at the time.
You, Paul, haven't you heard? They burnt your flat down.
I'm quite sure how they found Geordie. I think it was through a Melody Maker ad, and I was found through a Melody Maker ad.
Geordie showed up. He had long, curly, ginger hair and a northern attitude.
This sort of Teddy Yob lout type character.
You have to take into consideration what he said on the phone to us. I've never played with a band, but I'm the best in the world. And when I asked him, where have you been playing? He went, in my bedroom at my mum's place. So it didn't sound very good. And we plugged in and he started playing and it was like fire from heaven. Sound. It's like I knew it. I knew the sound. It was a complete sense of deja vu. It was incredibly emotional. And I was so excited.
He came over to my bed sit in Earl's Court and he said, you'll have to come up to Cheltenham where the singer lives, do an audition.
Tempted him down there under the sort of promise of free food and lodging. So we ended all up in Cheltenham at Jazz's mum's place and Mr. C2, God rest his soul, and booked the first rehearsal. And, you know, I'd really love to know the date.
Yeah, it was just Jazz bashing around on this electric piano, and he had this sort of beret with a feather. He was a bit of a hippie, really.
He denies this fervently, but he had a feather earring, and I just thought that was really weird.
The youth in his swastika T-shirt and his fucking chain doing the full Sid routine.
It was just sort of, oh, it's him.
I was the most really experienced in real world because I'd done tours with other bands and I'd done proper gigs and they'd never played outside their bloody youth club, basically.
I think he was trying to avoid something or trying to find somewhere to live or something like that, you know. And he was just there.
We had this jam, and Jazz and Paul were like, oh, let's go to the pub and talk about this. And I don't think they were that impressed.
Youth couldn't play, fucking chokes. Choke. And I go, come on, Jesus Christ, God, you can play chief. And we just ended up fucking finding one note and fucking staying on it.
And it went on for ages and got more and more intense. Jazz and Paul walked in on it.
We'd had enough to drink, and it was like, well, shall we? Perhaps the beer had worked its magic, but it wasn't the same room that we had left.
Paul just went straight to the kit and started playing. And then Jazz just started playing. And that became Are You Receiving, our first single.
I consider that point the birth of the band. That was it, when the chemistry comes together, when the planets collided, you know. It in the fucking setup, this shit.
Shrewdly, I think we spent about almost a year rehearsing in Cheltenham before we unleashed ourselves. And then I think within 17 gigs, we were headlining the Lyceum.
Needless to say, these two great souls that manifested were Geordie and Youth. The magic had worked.
Psyche, oh, and that was John Peel, November 79. That was a few years ago. John Peel said that this is a good band. He thought it was a professional band having him on. He said, I've never had a band as good as this, and it was Turn to Red.
Killing Joke, good. Good punk, not commercial. Not commercial. A lot of bands nowadays have gone crap commercial.
We'd come through all these punk bands who were really good to go and see live, but they couldn't play for fuck. Bands like Eater and The Clash were around, but The Clash were just a pretend rock and roll band dressed up as punks. And the Sex Pistols had almost disintegrated by then. But then Killing Joke, it wasn't just screaming and shouting, and they could actually really play.
We like rhythm, you know. Like rhythm, you understand? Because it makes me feel... Rhythm makes me feel like I'm a human being, like I'm an animal, you understand?
First one to play, 1981. I was 16 years old. No other band did that, you know, made me feel the same way. It was like an electric shock going through me.
I actually saw them play. It was incredible. You could cut the atmosphere with a knife. It was really thick. And it was a real tribal thing. They were giving out to the audience were giving back. And they had this air of menace to it, which, you know, I love that in music. Menace and danger. I know they're terms that are used a lot in music, but believe me, it was really there.
Jazz would come on in full makeup, and you didn't know whether to laugh or to be totally afraid, because he kind of looked like the devil, but it was slightly perverse and a bit strange and almost silly.
Nothing like that scares me. I'm from Salford. Who gives a fuck about the devil?
He wasn't comfortable being the singer. He didn't really want to be. He wanted to be the keyboard player, and we had arguments about it. I had a voice, but playing the drums and being the singer looks really naff. I mean, it was never going to go anywhere. So he is the reluctant front man of the band.
You have a sort of a very mixed image, I think, certainly in the band, from your sort of Alvin Lee Rocker type hairstyle to this sort of Sid Vicious sort of twisted hair.
Yeah.
How does that arise?
Well, it's always been like this. We don't consider ourselves to be anything other than individuals. We have our own personal likes and dislikes, and out of this somehow we coalesce into something called Killing Joke.
Paul never seemed to be thrashing away, you know, he wasn't Keith Moon. It was just quite controlled, but huge power.
If he looked at me, I thought it would hit me, you know, he really had me on the edge of my pants, and I had to keep up with him and not make him look silly. He made me into a good player.
If you don't know the game, then you're still part of it. Because
You're certainly more, if you like, on the sort of art sort of poly circuit.
Oh, that's rubbish. There's nutcases at our gigs. You know, that's sort of real.
Why?
Well, I don't know. They're the only sort of honest people, you know. They haven't got any pretense about them, you know.
I just thought, this is what music should be. It's just like being hit in the face by a train.
When I joined, I was the one who wasn't really into the occult and the magic. I was a really arrogant, conceited young punk, you know, who thought he knew everything. And suddenly I was totally flung into this hermetic, occult, mystical world of possibilities and realities of which I had never been aware of before. And I did blow a few fuses.
When they
they first came in, they were a cocky bunch of guys, really. They come in as a pack, and then after a while I found out that they were this band called Killing Joke, which meant nothing to me at the time. I heard a bit of their music, and it fitted.
Looking at the times that I grew up, the hippie dream started to get a bit nasty. People started dropping acid, went to various gurus and Eastern philosophy and everything. It all was starting to eat itself with the Manson stuff. And I think that sort of culturally, when people started looking at mysticism and perhaps Aleister Crowley and all that sort of thing for their, you know, new experience of the enlightenment that hippiedom had promised them.
Be prepared to enter a world stranger than you have ever imagined. The world of witchcraft, magic, and ritual.
It was very much a time for throwing away the rules. You were considered terribly staid and unnecessarily stupid if you did it the way round that people have been doing it for 100 years, 400 years, whatever. And so you just launched yourself into whatever particular ritual you wanted to do at the time. And you were prepared to take the consequences, because all men think that they're going to live fast and die young, and what the hell?
We were shamanistic, generally speaking, and devotional, which was Geordie and myself predominantly. We would celebrate the moons to get our actions aligned with the seasons of Mother Nature. Paul was actually the ceremonial one.
I grew up listening to Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin. What are you going to do? You know, what's that all about?
There's no doubt about the fact that your overall beliefs, no matter what they are going to underlie what you're doing. And I don't know collectively, but as far as jazz goes, I know that the mysticism played a very important role for him. You know, within the music, he's either playing with magic or magic's playing with him.
What was apparent about him was that he was a doer. He's an experimenter. He doesn't just accept what he's told.
We used to take the car and go to the Royal Wright Stone in Oxford. Sometimes a very important date, you know, like solstice. I was starting even to be scared to be perhaps sacrificed, you know, and I was keeping a very low profile, disappearing in the forest or something, and let them do their ritual in the middle of a circle.
We would use drum and mantra. I would take my ocarinas and I would move in a clockwise direction, this a spiral dance around a stone circle. We became adepts at raising energy at these grid points. We became really, really good. We could activate these grid points.
There are so many symbolism and so many things that I thought, oh my God, perhaps I'm gonna die.
And of course, this technique was sort of employed within raising the energy live on stage. And eventually, the two became one. The gigs became ceremonies. And then we did it on a grid point, by accident, and time was transcended.
Motion's changing, day to day.
Reading Hexagon, mad fucking gig. And suddenly, about 5 songs in, it's gone silent. Totally fucking silent.
And you just have this.
And before this, it was just screaming madness.
And everything would sort of look like it's going in slow motion. I'd be looking at Geordie and be going, oh.
Everything's slowing down.
I'm playing the fucking guitar. What the fuck? I can't hear anything. And I'm witnessing this body playing.
I'm getting scared. So I look over to Jazz, and he's on the keyboard, and he's doing exactly the same.
I had no idea what was going on.
Total silence. Total fucking silence.
I look at the audience now, we're like, wow, what's going on?
It became an out-of-body experience.
We're very fucking clever, aren't we? We did this, man. We fucking got it to this stage.
When God walks through the fucking room.
And then suddenly, whoosh, and you're back in. And you can hear the fucking music.
Bang! Back into super reality of the place going insane.
Could have been 30 seconds, could have been 40 seconds, but it was paradise for fucking 40 seconds.
It was the most incredible experience, and we experienced it collectively. And everybody shit themselves.
The other thing in the early days with Killing Joke was the actual Killing Joke as a unit. The minute the four of them got together, it was a complete personality change. This wasn't Paul Ferguson, this wasn't Jazz Coleman, this was Killing Joke. And that's when the aggro over the artwork would start. It was just chalk and cheese. They'd want something, I'd want something else, and I'd do something, and we'd fight, and whoever got the last word. I mean, I totally fucked up the sleeve to What's This For on purpose. Paul Ferguson said, oh, we want that for the album. That's going to be brilliant. I said, well, I haven't finished doing what I was doing with it. No, just to do it like that. I just got really angry and just threw some films together and said, you know, go and fucking print that, you bastards.
Sounds gave it 5 stars for the music and 1 star for morals. And I've never seen that before or since. The guy was freaked out and he felt obliged to put a warning in that it could corrode you spiritually.
Killing Joke is best explained in the emotions, in the eyes, in the mouth, in the emotions, you see? See, we try to be human beings in Killing Joke, that's all.
Killing Joke was not a polite band. You know, they will not say things just to please you. I mean, if they were really raw. Hammersmith Palace, 23rd of February 1982. The French television team was there, so it was really organized. I've been doing the interview before. I was trying to talk about occultism, and the jazz was. I don't know what you're talking about.
Look at the faces. It's not outside.
They had these huge studio TV cameras in the middle of the dance floor, and the whole thing collapsed with the weight of the fans. I remember being terrified because I was down the front. And I remember just bodies falling and bodies flying around, and the bouncers trying to pull people out and shouting, stop playing, stop playing. And I remember Jazz looking at this chaos at the front and just went, war dance, and then they went straight into war dance. And it was just like a scene from Dante's Inferno down the front, and they weren't going to stop playing.
Music for pleasure. It's not music no more. Music to dance to. music to move. This is music to march to. To a war dance. A war dance. Whoa! A war dance. A war dance. A war dance. Whoa!
I think he was really pleased to be filmed, you know, that day. It was going to be shown on a French television on Saturday, so it's 20 million people are going to see Killing Joke.
Western civilization, I give it 20 months and it would be gone. All gone. Bang!
Jazz had a wobbler. He basically thought that was the end was nigh.
He went on one of his birthdays. I even made him a cake and he disappeared.
We were standing outside a television studio. We were supposed to go on, and this sort of letter showed up, you know, saying, see ya.
Where is Jazz Coleman? And they phoned me up and I wouldn't tell them.
Punk star goes nuts, runs off to Iceland. Great story.
We were all sat there, heard he'd flee to Iceland, and did anyone give a fuck? No. I've fleed myself a couple of times. Never made it to Iceland, but I made it to the Isle of Wight once and realised what a shithole it was and came home.
Was when I left the band, or when the band left me. Because first Jazz went, and then Geordie, I think.
I was sitting in my flat, and I felt something behind me, but I didn't turn around. I deliberately ignored it. That thing that I felt actually was Geordie leaving. That was Geordie walking out the front door, because we lived together.
Silently and sneakily and snakily, they slipped off without so much as a note. And with Jazz, I was particularly upset because I had to read about it in the Bloody NME. I've known these guys 4 or 5 years, gone through some serious rites of passage with them, and they can't even give me the time of day.
Well, I don't know what happened in Iceland because I had to go out and work in the Middle East because I didn't have any money. I was skint because I didn't get any money out of Killing Joke on Malicious Damage.
I'm not sure that it went very well for them over there.
Jazz told me that he had read an article about what would be the safest place in the world if there was a nuclear war, and in that article it said that in the northeast of Iceland. Another thing was that he was a reincarnation of Aleister Crowley. I think he was the third or the fourth one that I met. There was a sentence in the Book of the Law which says, choose yea an island, fortify it, and things like that. Island is written the same way as we write Iceland in Icelandic. That was also a connecting point. I think he sincerely believed that.
The thing about the Book of the Law is that Crowley channeled it in 1904, and then he spent the rest of his life trying to decode it. I think because of the complexities of it, you can make your own interpretations. I mean, at one time, I had a moated site in Sussex, and I thought that was it's your application to your, you know, your magical destiny, if you wish.
I discovered many references, prophetic references, that described a better way of life, and indeed an island that survived the great upheaval. The interesting thing was, all the references I discovered were nearly all by Rosicrucian authors. At the centre of the Golden Dawn system of magic lies the invocation of the Holy Guardian Angel, an ecstatic mystical process that fascinated the chiefs and leading members of the Golden Dawn. Individuation, in Jungian terms, is about tapping into the unconscious. Each of us has a dark double, an adversary that we must face. And until we know this double, we do not know ourselves. So I committed myself to go through this process. Apart from Geordie, no one was really aware of my intentions. I couldn't honestly imagine sitting down with the band and management, explaining why I wanted to study a range of different subjects from Nordic mythology to the study of radiations that emanate from certain holy sites, let alone the location of my holy guardian angel. So I made plans in secret, left for Iceland. And then I began the process of individuation at Snæfellsnes Glacier.
This is special. There are many people who believe that it's some special power in the glacier, and I believe that also. It's some power up there. I have felt it myself.
It's an energy spot. The energy is intense, but it's not good, it's not evil, it's just pure energy. It amplifies whatever is there. So if you're an evil person, you'll be a more evil person if you're staying there. If you're a good person, then you'll be a better person.
I remember when we went to the glacier.
It's the right night, the right moon.
We was walking for 2-3 hours. When we got up to the snow,
It suddenly got warmer and mistier. It was like we were welcomed. The mountain was in control.
they were very happy to be there, and they start dancing.
Jazz not walking anymore, and it was beyond fucking doubt. He was levitating. He was about fucking 2 foot off the ground. Quite fucking surreal.
It's a strange place. The elements change, the vibrations change. The physical body disappears or appears.
And they was drawn towards the herd. Plenty more where they come from.
The energy of that fucking place was, I wouldn't say intense, it was just fucking freedom. Absolute fucking freedom.
There was a rumour from Iceland that they were messing around with this weird sound machine that vibrated. And Brian reckons that they rang him up and tried to do something to him over the phone once. This sort of theory of the walls of Jericho, and you can actually do deep enough sound that'll shake walls and bring down buildings. But, that's just fucking weird rumours.
I was involved in something called the Oracle Project. A certain number of geomancers had got together. Experiments were conducted on human behavior by means of resonance. And this was done with a gentleman called Gulli Otterson, who can be described as a free-thinking inventor who also happened to be a musician.
Band Iceland Jazz Coleman there. It was a very intense, small group of people. We wanted our music to break through your defense mechanism. We went to great lengths to encode messages into the structure of our music in a very subtle way. It's one element that was very dominant in their music, also in Kill Joke music, was the strange intervals we used. We were not using minor or majors. We were doing diabolic intervals, very dissonant But if you put all the dissonance and the demons together, they turn into angels. Very simple, but it breaks all the rules. That was Jazz Coleman. Break all the rules, collect all the demons from music throughout 5,000 years, and put them together in one song.
Gully was interested in developing a prototype to create mood changes within the perimeter of a concert. However, my interest lied firmly in researching the Earth's pulse rate of 7.83 hertz, which I considered would be more prevalent in sacred sites. I could see the correlation between healing in such areas by gradually adjusting the Earth's pulse rate by chant, mantra, in order to accomplish quantum healing. And so, I embarked upon a series of experiments with two of my colleagues of the Oracle Project. Sarah Parkinson was a student of the occult, and I'd met her in Cheltenham when I was 18. And then there was Vivian Otisdottir, Gully's sister. I see the earth rising a second time. Out of the foam, fair and green. Down from the fells, fish to capture. Wings to eagle, waters flow. And we would repeat these 4 lines over and over again until we entered another dimension. We refer to it as Universe B. I see the earth rising a second time. Out of the foam, fair and green. Down from the fells, fish to capture. Wings to eagle, waters flow. The experiences were of such intensity that past and future seemed to be transcended. We would not actually be in our own bodies. There were many strange incidences during this series of experiments, one of which was when Vivian was struck by lightning.
We were in the kitchen. The window was wide open, and I just witnessed this huge lightning and this screaming from Vivian. Hysterically screaming. I turned back to Vivian and Jazz, and she just... she was just freaked out. He showed me her hand, and it was all swollen and red, as, you know, how can someone survive by hit by lightning? I don't know.
My sister got struck by lightning 2 times in Jazz Coleman's company. But the second time was more dramatic. Lightning striking all over the place, thundering rain. There was magic in the air. Alistair Crowley and the books. Everybody was crazy. She was soaking wet, standing out on a balcony, confronting Jazz Coleman about their personal affairs. She was so lucky, she was protected, she was soaking wet. So the millions of volts of energy just slid along her wet, smooth body to the ground. She was unharmed, not even knocked out. So our dear Mr. Coleman really recognized my sister as a divine being.
Iceland was a series of experiments, a period of such exquisite beauty that I've spent the last 27 years trying to access the dimensions that I visited. It's an emotive subject, not least for the fact that Sarah and Vivian are both dead. I did meet Sarah and Vivian later on, and I noticed a curious parallel. After meeting Vivian in Geneva, she confided in me that the rituals we performed were one of the most beautiful experiences of her life. And Sarah, she admitted much the same. I was left with the feeling both Sarah and Vivian had little interest in the mundane concerns of the world around them shortly before their respective deaths. It was almost as if they personified a profound nostalgia for a vaguely sensed lost paradise, both possessing the single urge to abandon earthly existence for their true home.
And now it's time to sit back once again and enjoy the sounds of Killing Joke.
By the time Iceland came along, I'd had a breakdown because I'd been taking a lot of LSD. I started to get very paranoid, see conspiracies everywhere, and I even broke into the Grand Lodge of the Masons in Covent Garden.
We went through a few weeks of trying to find a replacement, and it was just pointless, you know. I mean, what? How? You know, for what purpose?
I do remember him on Top of the Pops. Well, he wasn't on Top of the Pops. It was a man with a motorbike helmet on, playing the keyboard.
I was going to say, because they did that when Jazz was just like this dummy. As in, it wasn't a person, it was just a dummy with a crash.
Yeah.
I wasn't even that pissed off. I mean, to be honest, I was sad because, you know, Jazz had had a few other kamikaze moves on the band. Just when the band was going to fucking break, Jazz would do something to ensure it wouldn't happen.
You know, one minute you're riding the crest of the wave, and the next minute, you know, your boat's sunk.
Everything was open for them. And when Jazz disappeared, they have to cancel so many important events. The business never forgive that.
I think there was a lot of pressure from the record company to start touring because the album has recently been out, and it was very important for them to start catching up. I got this phone call from a friend who was in connection with Jazz and Jody and asked me if I was willing to meet them. In a week I was in London. We lack a drummer. They called Paul Ferguson and asked him to come.
This must have been 6 months after they left or something. In the meantime, I'd lost everything. And trying to get this project called Brilliant going with Youth. And I just got a telephone call saying, would you consider, you know, coming back? I went out there and felt like a bit of an outsider in a way. But I felt that we still hadn't really done what we'd set out to do.
They told me that Paul was willing to join the band, but he would decide which bass player he would play with.
Told Youth, I'm not doing this Brilliant thing with you anymore. I'm going off to Wales.
And it was Raven.
I didn't speak to Youth again for quite a few years.
I just took the flight back to Iceland.
people watching tonight will not have heard of, let alone seen the next band. That hasn't stopped them building up a fanatical following and notching up 4 chart albums. Here's a chance to find out what you've been missing. Here we have Killing Joke.
The first time I met Raven, he was with a girl I know from my hometown, and she said, "Oh, this is Paul, he wants to play in Killing Joke." I looked at him and thought, oh, well, you know, youth's gone daft, so there might be a chance there.
And this kid Raven showed up. I didn't know who he was or where he came from. He was young, energetic, really into doing it. And he had an attitude.
Raven was party central, but he was also a very down-to-earth guy. He fitted in perfectly, I think.
Paul brought a whole different dynamic to the bass in the band, and I think he defined himself outside of youth.
There was that point where he was doing all those curling bass lines, and I think Paul gave him the space to do that because he always knew that Paul would be rock solid behind him.
After our trip to Iceland, where I started the individuation process, I made contact with Hilmarsson. And Hilmarsson presented me with this strange object that was carved out of ash. On one side, it had a snowflake design. On the reverse side was my rune. I started having the habit of putting this object underneath my pillow, and I had 3 incredibly vivid dreams that would point me in the direction of a certain place at a certain time. The first of these, a voice was saying to me, the islands of the North Atlantic, Iona. And so in January of '82, I set off for Iona, which is where the first transmission occurred. The pendulum gave me the indication that there was a massive energy at this place called Dunai, which is the highest point on Iona. I fasted for 3 days. I went up to the top of this mountain, and then I got myself into my usual state of trance.
Mark out the points, build the pyre, assemble different drummers, light up the fire, put on your masks and animal skins. Illumination, illumination, listen to the drums. Between each beat of the drum. Oh, beloved mother of liberty, hold me in your arms.
I'm not who they think I am. I recited mantra and I drummed until I heard a quiet voice who told me to stop. And it was at that point the transmission began.
Oh, beloved woman of liberty, come to me! Burn away all my impurities! Hold me in your
The word Ica. And then it continued, Ichabod, the veins are in the body of the gods. When I checked the Kabbalistic reference, it gave Eve, or to show forth. And Eve, at the top of Dunai, means the point of fertilization.
I see the earth rising a second time. Out of the foam, fair and green. Down from the fells, fish to capture, wings to eagle.
Her Majesty, the Queen, has asked me to form a new administration, and I have accepted. Where there is discord, may we bring harmony.
Where there is error, may we bring truth. Where there is doubt, may we bring faith. And where there is despair, may we bring
'80s was kind of a groundbreaking track. It was a song about what was happening at that time in the world.
Never heard it over the radio. Maggie Thatcher wouldn't have it on because he forecast the Falklands War before it actually started. And she didn't like that.
Geordie's guitar tuning on that track was unique. And Nirvana must have been huge fans because they played, what was that song?
Come As You Are.
Come As You Are. I mean, that is 80s.
We've got 3 million lawsuits against Nirvana at the moment for stealing 80s off us, which is Come As You Are. And Kurt from Nirvana has already said, yes, we did it.
If it was resolved, I should have seen some money, and I don't think anybody saw any money. Oh, well, I didn't know who the fuck they were when I met them. I didn't know anything about them. But I don't know why I got the call to work with them. I do know why. It was EG Records. They said, there's this very awkward band that we have on the label that maybe you can help us with. Quite a few friends said, what you do? I said, I'm working with Killing Joke. They said, you're working with Killing Joke? Are you mad? They're crazy. They're devil worshippers.
Der BBC Gehör verboten und die Band zwecks Ruhefindung zum Laubharken in den Hyde Park abkommandiert. Killing Joke.
It was decided that we would go to Berlin to record the album.
Berlin ist absolut ungesund für Menschlichkeit.
Insanity of humanity, I think.
Ein absolut kaputter Ort.
Jazz favours countries that are in the midst of economic decay and collapse. He feels there's a power there, there's electricity, there's a certain thing going on. We started recording, and the band that I knew from London all of a sudden was a completely different beast. Working with the band, I suddenly began to realise how Geordie and Jazz worked off each other. Jazz is in awe of Geordie because Geordie can interpret Jazz's chords in such a different way. I've never heard a guitar player like Geordie. Geordie is like, I mean, his guitar is just like playing an orchestra.
Love Like Blood was a deserved hit for all the right reasons. I don't think anyone begrudged them that. I think it kept the headbangers happy, kept the pop fans happy. It was a little bit of genius songwriting.
It was always great going to see them around that time on tour. And I remember seeing Jazz come down the stairs there, and it literally was like seeing like the return of Emperor Nero. It was a fabulous feeling.
It's one of the defining bass lines of that era, you know.
It was not a conscious attempt at writing a commercial song at all.
We did start to tap into an emotional side that we hadn't explored before. I suppose it might have been part of Jazz's classical background.
He just did an anthem, Love Like Blood, Love Like Blood, and that was all based around the book that Paul was reading.
We did have a hit. Wow, amazing. It's the only time that we had any money. It wasn't very much, but it was enough to go, oh, wow, this is good.
Yeah, it was on every jukebox in every pub. And suddenly they were on the highest profile music show in Britain at the time.
Raven from Killing Joke.
Raven.
Raven. Oh, I knew
You did it already.
Something wrong. And it was going to be my
It was a very drunk Raven, and Jazz were interviewed by Paulie Yates. And Jazz going on about like how, you know, solid they were, one direction, big shiny boots, follow the drum, and they came on and stormed it.
Do you ever think that you would be suddenly so successful after 5 albums? Why do you think it's happened like that suddenly everyone's buying Killing Joke records?
Because, shut up a minute, because there's too many hairdressers around, that's why. And it's also because we're just the most brilliant live band in the world. Get it?
Do you think that saying things like that has made you a bit unpopular in the past? Because you have had a terrible reputation for saying outrageous things.
What, with journalists, you mean?
Yeah, with journalists rather than with...
Yeah, we've got a good relationship with the press, actually, you know.
They were hated by the press.
Music papers liked having Killing Joke because they knew it was probably going to be something was going to happen. But they had a real love-hate relationship with it.
So there was always this thing called the graveyard shift, and it always meant going to interview Killing Joke.
It wasn't really so much a process of asking questions. And one of them would say something, the other one would criticise them for saying it. They would start arguing with each other. You just had to try and get in there and occasionally make some sense of it all.
I don't think people really pay as much attention to music journalism as perhaps the media would like to think. Like other people on the enemy, these people think they're gods or something.
It was a good game for some years, and they played it well, the band, for quite a while.
Some people who didn't really realize what you were talking about could probably construe that as negativism.
I cannot see how we can be portrayed as negative. The only true optimism comes from realism.
Jazz, 100 quotes a minute worth blowing up in big type. Newspapers never lie.
I'm pleased I wasn't handling their publicity.
Geordie, I was reading the biog and it said something about the Geometria system that you've been getting into.
Geometria system.
Geometria system, what's that about?
Well, go for it.
All right, back to Jazz. Well, that's
Killing Joke really didn't care about being in the press, but at the same time, Jazz loved to have an audience.
That is using the beats per minute and relating that to numerology, which is obviously an aesthetic pursuit of art.
Most people didn't know what Jazz was talking about.
Good Lord, it sounds like quite heady, that. But let's pick up the conversation again in a minute.
Especially as Jazz often wouldn't talk about it. I mean, Jazz would mention it. And then as soon as the journalist said, so would you like to clarify? I go, no, fuck off. So, well, why did you mention it? It became, obviously, a talking point with the press because it was a bit, you know, it's a bit, ooh.
I always felt like jazz was the active part. And Geordie was perhaps more insidious, obviously, because he shared the same beliefs and everything.
The sound that comes out of this man, Geordie, it strikes terror into every guitarist on the planet. You know that's Geordie. You know it cannot be any other guitarist.
Geordie is just a phenomenally innovative musician. Got a unique, vicious, bitter, biting twang to his guitar.
Yeah, he's got an amazing sound. The intensity of that is the subtlety of less is more. You know, you can overplay him, bugger it all up, you know.
Like, you're in the band room with him, I'm watching Geordie for every cue. Which is interesting, because usually you follow the singer. And that's the key. You watch Geordie.
Geordie could have gone out there and become part of a lot of other bands. And I'm talking big bands, you know, bands like Metallica or something like that. But he's stuck with Killing Joke all the way through. He's never really got a lot of money out of Killing Joke. But there's that strong allegiance to being Killing Joke.
John said, imagine an Avro Lancaster 1942 bomber, guy in a leather hat with a cigarette holder and a cigarette and a gin and tonic in the other hand, going, right, we're over the target. That's how I describe Geordie Walker here.
He's so English, he can't live in England anymore. He lives in Prague, and I think in a weird sort of way, the Dickensian blackened streets of Prague owe more to his sense of Englishness than anything that England can offer anymore.
For someone who's had such a big impact, Geordie's a very quiet guy in the public face of things.
You'll find that my partner, Geordie, doesn't do interviews, unlike me. And his reason for this is that he cannot see the point about talking about music when it should be listened to. Now, I can really understand that, although I to the extent I disagree with him. I think that there is a role for music journalism and media.
When Geordie came to Iceland with his full-body jazz guitar, he couldn't understand what he was doing with his instrument. But he played it like a motherfucker.
Which is the shit that's got the goo. You know, you just know. Give us the goo. A lot of it's suspensions as well. There's always the odd ringing note. And you move chords and that's still ringing. This is effectively a suspensions. And it's what you're getting with the echoes too. Because there's previous notes from previous stuff still decaying under it.
He always plays the same guitar because it's semi-acoustic. It enlarges the sound, it rings more. And he would play through 2 Berman amplifier speakers with a little chorus on them. He's playing these weird shapes and inversions. He's got all these harmonic overtones because it's a semi-acoustic guitar.
It's fucking resonances and beats, man. It's fucking microscopic, you know. It's like freaking... You can hear it. You just heard it when you tune it up and you get that beat. You know, that's getting that at the right sort of resonance. There's a low fucking frequency thing going on too. It's all got to match. It's not fucking unlike cooking.
Yeah.
You know, getting all the fucking flavours sort of resonated.
Geordie is the most honest man you'll meet. He'll tell you whether you want to hear it or not. There's no doubt about that. He's got a pretty short fuse. He's a perfect foil to Jazz, you know, that's why it worked.
Geordie and Jazz are the alchemical marriage, really. Elementally, they're really well balanced. Geordie is earthy and fiery, and Jazz is airy and watery. So they have the perfect alchemical material.
You get the theatrical Jazz, you know, with all these stands and all that. And you get Geordie. It's like he's playing a ballad on the side of stage.
Their charts are really well linked. Jazz's Jupiter in Sagittarius sits right on all Geordie's planets in Sagittarius and is ascendant in Capricorn. So it's a hugely abundant creative relationship.
You have a feeling that nothing can touch, you know, Geordie.
Bless us and all who come on pilgrimage to Glastonbury. Guide our feet on the path of righteousness. Inspire us by your spirit.
I went to Glastonbury on February the 2nd, 1982, and I got the second transmission. This transmission began with Ha al-Akbar, this word, which was 256, the number of a spider, which has 256 kalas in the voodoo cult. And actually, when I studied it more, 256 is the spirit of the mother. Within days of going to Glastonbury, I opened Toni Morrison's book, Pathways of the Gods. And there in front of me was the spider at the Pampa de San Jose, with its abdomen intersected by a line that was aligned to the constellation of Orion. I worked out when approximately the constellation of Orion would be coming over the horizon and went straight to the Pampa. I arrived there 2 weeks before the proposed time of ritual. I pitched my tent behind a small hillock, lived in a semi-primitive state. 3 days before the ritual, I began my fast. And then on the third day, after nightfall, I made my way up one of the pathways I knew would intersect with the spider's abdomen. When I arrived in the correct place, began to play the drums and immersed myself in the mantra so I could get to the past and future place of Universe B. And again, a voice told me to start writing. And the first word of the writing was Tomenga. The Quicksilver methodology of communication. This is the third degree.
shadows of the foam, fair and green.
I discovered that ordinary men and women guard these vector points where UFOs and UAVs and hyperdimensional entities manifest.
Right, that's what it was. Right. When he came here, watch this, right? This whole area was static, right?
There were at least 9 or 10 balls, glowing balls.
And he starts flashing this image to us, like pulsating but strobing, like.
It stayed in the air for ages, didn't
They
move
didn't
on.
move away for a while. Do you understand where I'm coming from? I'm a military man. I know this shit. And one of them shot towards us. This is after we've already fucking, you know, like literally just been like absorbed by this energy.
I found it quite bizarre how this first confrontation I had with something that I believe deep down inside happened in the presence of Jazz.
They flashed a symbol at us. It's kind of weird because I recognise the symbol. It was like a matchstick man with a line through his head. That experience in there, I think they knew me. Yeah, I felt like I'd been looked at. You understand? To Jazz, it was something else.
Brighter than a thousand suns. That's when he was
trying to sing properly. Stop it.
It was a bit of a labour of love because I didn't choose to go to Amsterdam to record the album. It's the last place where I would take a Killing Joke. Berlin was dangerous enough.
The Melody Maker, in its gossip column, printed this photograph of Jazz getting out of a swimming pool with all his hair sort of squashed down. And was basically taking the piss out of him because the single hadn't been the #1 that everyone had expected. Phone started ringing. It was Jazz at 100 miles an hour in my ear. Who's the person that wrote it? Who's the person that wrote it? I'm going to get my pendulum and come up there and I'm going to point it at everyone. I'm going to find out who wrote that.
I had been interviewing the band, and after Jazz said, "Well, come with me, I'm going to give you a good story." So we jumped in a car. He tells the driver to stop at a fishing tackle shop and comes out with a package. We go on a bit further. He stops at a butcher shop, comes out with a package.
Phone call from reception. "Oh, Matt, I've got Jazz Coleman in reception for you. Shall I let him in?" I said, no, don't let him in.
There was a security door where all the journalists from Mosaic were pressed up against the glass, all staring wide-eyed, and none of them would dare come out.
So I went out to the reception and Jazz was there and it was all lovely Jazz. You know, you sort of put my arm around and he goes, "Oh, Matt, pleased to see you, da-da-da-da. Should we go in?" And I said, "You know, I can't let you in there, Jazz, because I know what's going to happen if I let you in there. It's going to be chaos." And at that point, he just went crazy.
He takes out this piece of liver from his jacket and he slaps this liver on the table. Then he takes out a tub of maggots and he dumps the maggots over the liver.
And started throwing it all over the reception.
These maggots just go crawling across this desk, and the poor receptionist screaming her head off.
And he had these scissors which he dug into the table.
Recited some Latin and said, "I want this journalist to call and apologise for what he's written about me."
Part of it was brilliant, part of it was frightening, part of it was like, where the fuck is this going to end? It was welcome to Jazz World for everyone in that reception that day.
C'est un groupe qui vous a beaucoup plu, je m'en souviens, on s'en souvient tous ici à l'émission. Il s'agit bien sûr des Killing Joke.
En ik zeg ook u tegen ze, dit is Killing Joke.
Killing Joke and a few salient words from Jazz Coleman, who was talking to Marky.
Suddenly we're on all these pop shows around Europe. It was sort of the other side of the coin. Oh, this is a commercial band now. It was nice. It was like, you know, a little glittery thing dancing in front of your eyes. But it didn't bring us any closer together. If anything, we got further apart from each other.
The Joke kind of lost control of their empire themselves. It got very dissipated. The reason I think it got dissipated is because they didn't have any money. They were broke. Nighttime album was very successful. Brighter was, you know, relatively successful. But the deal that they were sucked into, they were never going to make any money. They were just losing all the time.
They weren't going to be top 10 every record. And of course, you know, you sign to a big label. What do they want? Why are they bothering to put money into you if you're not going to pay them back with hits?
Yes, we were under pressure. Yes, the record should be better than the last one. Yes, you should, you know, try and follow in the vein of Love Like Blood or whatever. But we just discovered an emotional side that we wanted to pursue.
Killing Joke were stuck between two stools, I think, at that point. They were trying to be as independent and as bloody-minded as ever, but they also wouldn't have minded having #1 hits. I don't think you can have both. For a label, I think it would have been one almighty headache, I'm sure.
I really like the idea that we'd have this incredibly powerful musical thing and nobody would know ever who did it. And it was a lovely idea. But of course, you get on stage and you're all there. What are you going to do? Play behind a screen? Once people are interested in hearing what the singer has to say, suddenly you've got a cult of personality. And to a large extent, I think that's why we eventually fell out.
It talks of an incandescent column of smoke and flame, brighter than 1,000 suns.
I'm not saying anybody's right or wrong here, but, you know, it was becoming more and more about ego, and my ego was getting hurt.
The original lineup, only you two, I think.
There have been changes, there's had to be changes. The fact is, we don't really want a sort of punk rhythm section for the next 8 years, you know?
Some of his behaviour was an affront to me, an affront to the band. We couldn't be in the same room together.
We wanted a more articulate, funky, powerful rhythm section.
Did the other guys feel bad about it?
Not at all, we paid them off.
And then, of course, he started doing his solo material, which started costing an awful lot of money, and the record company said, well, no, this has to be a band project. So I recorded drums with him not being there, and I refused to listen to any of the keyboards on the record while I was doing it, which was just insane. I was playing completely out of time. I got the message that the drum tracks are no good, you'll have to pay for them and do them again. And I just said, fuck it, I'm not going to. I just left the country.
As long as I'm alive and as long as Geordie's alive, Killing Joke is alive, right?
And they got to a stage for Jazz where he went into deep depression. He was being sued by the record company, and if he ever walked out of his front door, there'd be a person with a writ there, so he could never work again unless he started paying the bill off. He was terrified. He was in the middle of a nervous breakdown.
His passion and intensity is good, but invariably, you know, you mix passion and intensity with a big bag of drugs and a load of booze, and you're going to get someone going off the handle, aren't you, really?
You have written, they're lying here on the floor.
That's right.
A symphony and a book. You're a quite busy person.
That's right. My symphony I hope to have performed this year in England, I hope, and the other side of the world.
Can I show it?
Sure, you can.
It's really a symphony.
That's right.
And then it was the beginning of his classical career.
Art of Noise Supremo Anne Dudley and Jazz Coleman, Killing Joke's founder member, are an unlikely couple to see on the streets of Cairo. They came here to record an album called Songs from the Victorious City, Victorious City being the literal translation of Cairo. A mutual love of classical music drew Dudley and Coleman together on this project. He's a classically trained violinist, and she spent 3 years studying at the Royal College of Music.
At first moment, he was very crazy because he told me I want to learn about the Arabic music. He want to know everything. You can see it in his eyes. So I keep learning him for about 10 days. After that, I surprised he writing our Arabic music as one of us. I didn't believe that he can make a good harmony between the Western music and the Oriental music, but he have done it.
He'd been playing me bits and pieces of symphonies that he'd been writing during the Joke sessions, but this was the first time that it was a collaboration and someone had recorded it and released it.
Biggest pop star in Egypt.
And then, of course, the Depression disappeared and Jazz's classical career was just taking off right, left and centre.
This is called the Zepp Symphony. Symphony, it's a symphony. I tell you. No, it's the machinery is in place. Big record, this with the London Philharmonic Orchestra, and I'll take you to the West. One go, tonight.
It was a surprise for me to find English people interested about our music. He sit on the piano and I sit on the cajon, and we try to make a relation. Since this time, I found he knew what he wanted.
Good.
I heard that he was doing it, but I didn't actually get to hear it until the end, and I thought he'd done a magnificent job. OK, it was Led Zeppelin, but he brought Jazz Coleman to the party. The jazz is in there, alive and well.
And Jazz, being classically trained, fantastic musician, in the pages of the music press, they couldn't really deal with that. And I think a lot of the antagonism in the early days was just journalists not understanding it. He'd won the St Nicholas Award at the age of 4, but, you know, in the pop landscape at the time, that meant for nothing, really. It was just very easy for them to sort of say, oh, well, he's mad, isn't he? And then sort of, like, take the piss out of him. But he wasn't mad, he was passionate.
You don't have to be Egyptian to enjoy Egyptian music. You don't have to be West Indian to enjoy Caribbean music. But it was whatever you identify with spiritually.
Is Jazz religious?
He must.
Is he a Muslim?
He must. Everyone is Muslim. They make themselves Christian or Jewish, but the religion, it's one. It's one God. You believe or you not believe.
What do you think will happen to mankind?
It's finished. Must finish. Everything have a start and have an end. Our prophet, he is the last prophet. Someone asked him about the day of the end. So he told, between me and the end, like from this finger to the other one. I don't know how much time from here to here. It doesn't make a difference for me. He is going to the end. Did you prepare yourself to the end? This is a question.
When Egypt goes, which it will do because of the decreasing geomagnetic field, it's a kind of signal, and this is written into one of the holiest books of the occult in modern times. There's going to be a huge upheaval coming. There will be fire and blood in the Victorious City. Al-Qahira is the Victorious City. We're at 0.05 Gauss at the moment and decreasing to 0 Gauss. As soon as we get close to 0 Gauss, they've done the tests on the astronauts. This manifests in terms of random aggression and madness, basically. When Cairo falls, we are a matter of maybe a year maximum away from singularity.
Killing Joke is back. The band that ties spirituality with primal violence has reformed, reuniting with bassist Raven.
Joined by drummer Martin Atkins, who previously played with Public Image Limited. They have major new music and major new ideas, and they're getting no support from major record companies.
When they came back together, the band took complete creative control. They didn't listen to any outside pressure. They were like, we will make the record and nobody will say anything to us.
It was good to see him angry again. There was less poetry, more hate.
When Big Paul left, Raven said, he made my job as easy as anything. All I had to do was turn up when Big Paul was playing drums. And Martin was obviously even more aggressive and intricate, I would say. So there's a jazz element to Martin that really propelled the band in a different direction.
So would you like to tell us what you've been doing in the sort of last few years when we haven't heard anything from Killing Joke?
It's probably been the worst 2 years of my life. Everybody in the band went through absolute hell. We all got to the point where there was absolutely we're 100% skint, and I ended up in a psychiatric ward, actually.
When was the last time you had a tender, juicy sex?
Very serious. Hits and any other handy missiles at police and colliery buildings. The police responded by sending in a snatch squad. The miners resisted, and the police...
Jazz had been having a terrible time in the lead up to that album. He told me once that he felt as if he had been made of glass, that he was actually possessed. And I think a lot of that fed into that album. And I think it's like one of those great things that Killing Joke do when they're at the top of their game, is mix what's going on, the turmoil inside the band, with the turmoil that's going on with the political world. I've done it a lot of times. And it was the age of greed, it was the age of Thatcher privatising everything. The gas, the electricity, the water, everything was being taken out of the hands of the people. And Jazz, being this fantastic romanticist European, hated that. And on that album, he rebelled against it brilliantly.
People need something to resemble the struggle they have in trying to make a living today. Or, you know, they need this level of intensity in the music, and we provide
It's strange that you really like the live work with Killing Joke, and yet with your orchestral arrangements and so on, you've got to be right behind.
Oh, he's a different person. Completely different person. He's got another name. I mean, I call him Jazz, but he's the other Jazz. You know, he wears different clothes. It's another lifetime.
You are an inspiration to me. You are my inspiration of how not to be. You are my inspiration to achieve a better way of life.
Whoever invented the jester persona for Jazz was incredibly prophetic. That sick where you turn, and one side's miserable and black, and the other side's, you know, Harlequin and all the rest of it. That's him. Jazz can be very calm and very collected.
Go fucking well away from me!
No, say again!
Is there another side to Jazz? Can he freak out? Yeah, of course he can.
I'm the chosen boy. You better fucking believe it, you fucker.
He's a very gentle, reflective person inside. I mean, you wouldn't think that looking at Killing Joke, but inside is, as you know. He's quite introvert and he worries. He worries a lot.
His mind is, you know, it's more dangerous than the computer, his mind. It's like he never stops thinking.
Man is an aggressive, predatory beast. The Wall Street crash that happened six months ago or so, now it's going to reoccur again. Why devote our lives exclusively to the acquisition of material possessions when we won't be taking anything with us on the go?
He'll always hook on to something because it's almost verging on paranoia in some ways. He has a deep fear of something, and he manifests it in different ways. Right from the start, he had this problem. He would be listening to things, and he'd be scared outside that. He had fears. I wasn't sure why.
Bright skies and smiles, and we'll talk of sunshine.
He was a chorister in a church choir. He was so committed. They said he was quite spiritual. He would get amazing reports from the Royal College of Church Music about this exceptional boy who could sing like a dream and play like a dream. He wasn't doing very well at school, but we knew that he had talents.
It's much the same everywhere. Diversion's right.
I don't know whether I believe in lineage or the inheritance of caste, but I do have Persian as well as Hindu in me. I'm half caste. I was brought up in a very white middle-class town called Cheltenham, and I felt like I was English here. I always felt like a foreigner here. I mean, I was always in fights at school and stuff because I always felt odd, different.
That track, The Pandies Are Coming, it was really about the first step in tackling my cultural identity crisis, which was this part of me that comes from the East, but it didn't sit right in England at that time. At that time, there were all these jazz clones, as youth calls it, all these Asian kids with flat caps. Young Asians in Great Britain, they have to be like a good boy, a good girl, or otherwise you step out of line. And they'd all run away from home, all these kids.
I use him as an inspiration to kids. And I say, this boy is supposed to have failed his music O-level, and yet he's able to conduct a symphony orchestra and he's never been to a music college. So what does it say? And some say, you don't know Killing Joke. I said, yes, I'm his mum. You're his mum? I think he was kind of spawned, you know, they don't think of them having mum, especially someone like me.
Spawn of the devil, yeah, right.
He's a very hot fish to handle artistically. You know, he's a difficult artist to work with because he's so passionate and so uncompromising.
He can be absolutely lovely, Jazz Coleman, and he can be a complete and utter shit.
Even knowing him really well, you know, there always comes a point where he starts physically threatening me or someone there, you know, with violence.
Oi! Oi! Take that fucking out, we're recording. Tell me where it goes. Take the last one out.
That's happened on all those projects. I think on the Pink Floyd one, he threatened to slash the A&R man's face if he made one edit to the... Oh, no, that was the Zeppelin one. If he edited his 20-minute version of Whole Lot of Love, which we didn't use at all in the end. You know, so then when he's like that, there's just no reasoning with him. And he just becomes a bit of a dictator and he expects everybody just to recognise his genius and do what he says.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, let's just fly that into the choruses. Really good, Chance. Did you get all of that?
Everything.
Matt and I know fine well that dealing with Jazz a lot of the time, he's like, right, I'm going to Peru, I'm going to record in a cave in Peru to invocate something or another. And like,
that's a real conversation.
And there's a bit of you that sort of sits there and thinks, why do you want to go to Peru?
When you're managing him, sometimes you sit and you look at each other and you're like, is this guy completely fucking crazy? You know what I mean? And then a part of you thinks, or is he manipulating this entire situation to get...
A good example of that is the trip to Egypt. The story is just fantastic. You know, who goes to record in the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramids of Giza? I tell you, nobody.
If there's ever a dangerous time in your life, believe it or not, it'll be now. Seriously.
We wanted to do some recording in the pyramids. Mary, our main contact, described herself as a white witch. She said she'd have to interview us to ascertain our intentions were correct. We had this interview and the guy goes, what do you want to do? And Jazz goes, I want to do an exorcism. And he goes, you're not Satanists, are you? And Jazz goes, I don't believe in Satan, so how can I be a Satanist? Do you? No, I don't. And he goes, well, then how can I be a Satanist? And everybody laughed, and that was it. I mean, we were in.
Over here is a hut. You see it in the distance, right? This
is where a major lays start and
On the planet Earth.
Dracula now.
The pyramids weren't sited randomly. It is indeed a huge marker peg for all the rest of the grid on the entire planet.
This is the great navel of the Earth. It's high energy. Don't need drugs for it. You don't.
Hello. The energy is very high in Cairo and around the pyramids. It's almost like you don't need to sleep there.
That's it.
Jazz thrives on that.
Jazz!
So we can go in the Queen's Chamber while you're doing your vocals, okay?
Jazz is going in.
Once you enter the King's Chamber, the harmonics in their room is just incredible. You have to whisper to each other because it just bounces off the walls. First battery pack we put in, the DAT machines just went flat straight away. The second battery we put in went flat straight away. The camera started playing up.
It was a terrible session. Jazz broke down, he drank too much, there was too many people around. All this weird stuff was going on, we got nothing. The next day, I kind of took the reins a bit and said, look, let's do it a bit more ritually. Let's have 3 guys in the King's Chamber. Everybody else can wait out in the corridors. We'll do a ceremony, we'll ritualize it, and then we'll see what happens.
These moments in our lives, we come to us all, the Spirit, and we cleanse ourselves.
Jazz did a prayer saying that we came in peace and we wanted to do it in a good way.
Mary and the girls suddenly turned up at the pyramids in this full Egyptian ceremonial dress.
Jazz, and these people around, they're doing like a praying or something. I think they're doing something not right.
The energy changed in the room straight away. You could feel it. You know, you could cut the air with a knife.
It was time when Sirius was rising in the sky in August. That really helped. The girls held the energy down there in the Queen's Chamber and created the right resonance and vibration for us to access that portal. We had like 2 hours, fantastic recording of Jazz, bellowing from the darkest agony of his soul.
I could feel myself elevating. Jazz was watching me and he was like, his eyes were getting bigger and bigger. He reckons that I did lift it off the ground. Our recording engineer, Sammy, was Egyptian. He'd never been in the pyramid before. He was sort of a little bit, not scared, but it didn't interest him to go there ever. At one point, he nodded off.
I fell asleep. That's why I remember that for 5 minutes, 4 minutes, my eyes closed.
When he awoke, he jumped up, hit his head on the bed, and ran for the door. I stopped him and said, hey, are you okay? And he said, yeah, I'm fine, but the Eye of Horus was coming after me.
His eyes, I remember it. It was a shiny eyes, comes like this and look at me and go. It was scary, really, actually. This eyes, it comes to my dreams many times. From this day, I never go to the pyramids again.
It was a really, really powerful experience. You know, for me personally and for musically, it was incredible.
I've known Jazz for about 5 years. He tried to fight me once. He was rolling his eyes around and freaking out. He was going to chop my head off.
Do you know Killing Joke recorded in these pyramids?
Jazz told me all about it at the time. What a great coup. This is one of the major points of reference of history. I don't believe that this is 2800 BC. It's not. It's a lot older. The science isn't human. The science is mathematics that mankind is only now understanding. The whole point of our civilization isn't human. What is this civilization about, and who or what could have created it? It's basically structured around the Tree of Life. Everything that every human being knows or the way they think is attached to this Tree of Life. And the whole of everything that is attached to this tree will always work for the aim of number one. One being the unity of everything that's held within it. So we're all attached to a matrix. Now this matrix, really, I mean, it's very, very, very difficult to believe that any human being could ever have conceived of this. They're making something else, something big, something that none of us are going to have any free will about. We're not going to have any free will once we're attached at all. Look at the ant, look at the termite. This is the new brave new world we're entering.
Science fiction 20 years ago, but a biometric reality today.
I fervently believe the Western governments, the only way they're going to control the masses in the changes that are going ahead is going to be humans having implants. Technology is developed to the extent that is a reality. We're a matter of years away from the situation. I think it's beyond paranoia.
Jaz Coleman and Killing Joke record their next album in Auckland at Coleman's new recording studio next month.
I had worked with Jaz on an album for my own band, Shihad. He'd produced that album, which he did a fantastic job on. And when Killing Joke turned up, that's when it all started going fucking sideways. Jaz had this mic set up. I think it was called the cunt mic. And it was just a microphone patched in so that he could abuse us as we were tracking drums. It was like, oh yeah, of course, you've got to yell fuck at me while I play this. Fine, you go right ahead, you know. Paul Ferguson and Martin Atkins You know, they were huge heroes of mine. It influenced a whole series of other drummers that I was really into, like Mike Borden from Faith No More. It was a strange turn of events to find yourself in that cycle of creation after having watched it from afar and from, you know, the bottom of the world. You know, I mean, that was a genetic thread that Killing Joke started with drumming, where they brought that tribal thing into aggressive, high-energy music.
A lot of people who got into Pandemonium thought it was Killing Joke's first album. Yeah. And I bet that's happened to them 4 or 5 times in their career. There's not many bands that get more and more ferocious and harder and more fucked up the older they get.
It was back to them sounding unique and not trying to have pop hits. Youth sort of reappeared, and there was sort of confusion as to whether it was Youth and Raven, or was Raven out, or what, you know. Again, it was that thing of chaos in the background.
And we're coming from all different directions, and, you know, for a while it only worked when we played music. The rest of the time there was much turbulence. Still is.
Youth's sort of popped in and out of the band over the years, really.
Youth came to see us and wanted to get another band together, and we said, what do you want to do that for? Like, you should be a producer. And he said, oh, I think I should be a producer. I said, yeah, you could be. He's made a great career out of being that.
Youth produced everything from urban hymns to Paul McCartney. I think the record, not all the time, bear in mind Nighttime was nothing to do with Youth, you know. Yeah. But I think when he comes back in, even if he's not firmly at the controls of it, even if he's not literally the guy on the desk turning it, he sort of puts a bit of something into it, a bit of producer magic into it.
Youth making money. So I said to him, I bet you're quite chuffed. And I said, because, like, you know, he did the Verve album. The first 2 singles go straight to #1. And he kind of sits there sort of, yeah, man, you know, it's like...
He's the guy that when all the rest of them aren't talking to each other for whatever reason, they'll all still talk to Youth. Yeah.
Taking that symbol, we use the water of the side of Christ to wash the building, to cleanse it.
He came in like a bull at a gate, trying to, I don't know, stir emotions, stir something.
I want to start the debate in this country that what is Kiwi music?
He did set up York Street Studios with the help of a few other people, which really gave a boost to New Zealand music. I mean, they would never admit to that, but...
I first met Jazz at the opening of the York Street recording studio. He was really keen to do some recording together, and he was really adamant when we first worked on Oceania that that music was to be about the essence of this country.
He didn't really care what people thought of him, it seemed.
A real sincere desire to understand the Indigenous people and the culture was very apparent, because I don't think in the early 90s we were really doing that as a general thing. And I think that was kind of punctuated when I sang the national anthem in Māori at the Rugby World Cup, because the response to that was so extraordinary.
Men of every creed and race gather here before thy face. That's how the second verse of God Defend New Zealand starts. Ironic, then, that when the Maori Hinewi Mohi delivered her national song at Twickenham on Saturday, it didn't go down well with thousands of New Zealand rugby fans.
And this representative from the rugby union came in and said, we'd really like you to do an English version. And Jazz goes, no, she's rehearsed that, she only knows that version, and that's the version she's going to do.
What is the point of singing a national anthem in a language that most of the population can't understand?
The decision to sing it in Māori was a musical decision, not a political one. It's just that
I mean, you've got to listen to this girl.
You can't be singing it in English. You've got to sing it in Māori because we've got to make that statement.
This is all about music, you know. This is the issue.
If he's feeling passionately about that needing to be made as a statement, then I smell trouble. But I didn't smell the trouble to the extent that it panned out. It suddenly turned into this controversy, and I suddenly realised that we weren't so far along with our cultural understanding as I would have liked us to have been.
Thank you. This is your CD.
OK, that's enough plugging.
Jazz was really delighted because he copes with controversy so much better than me.
He'd make a good politician, because politicians have that two sides to them. You know, they can play the game, and Jazz can do that. But he wouldn't make a good priest. This was on the Gathering message board. I heard recently that Jazz had found God.
We cannot escape what we are. Far better to study our holy texts.
The sun is rising in the east, the beginning of a new day for mankind. My eyes were opened to see the divine mysteries of the Church of Killing Joe.
Nature, renewed
and chosen anointed prophet of God, Jeremy Jazz Coleman, beloved of the Most High. Now, if you fucking put me in this film and that's coming from me, you're fucking dead, I tell you.
Arte, Malkut, Vigebra, Vigedla, Leolam. We have 50% chance of survival to the end of the century. Give me strength. The male sperm count is getting lower and lower. We are, as males, an extinct species. The elites are preparing for the inevitable. And Jesus entered the temple and began to drive out those who sold. The Christ said, I come not with an olive branch, but with a sword. If we look at the Old Testament in the cold light of day, in relation to the UFO issue, Genesis chapter 6, verse 4. And there were giants in the earth in those days, and when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, great men were born, men of renown. And so we have the argument of the interventionist. So,
oh, you want to hear an amazing dream I had? Listen to this. Here's one of my favorite UFO dreams. It was kind of a harbor. The sky, like, fucking imploded. You could see all of these different spacecraft shooting from side to side, and UFOs everywhere.
Like Fatima.
All over the place. Holy fucking shit. They started showing these propaganda films. It was finally explaining the evolution of man and how it was aided by these aliens.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers.
I gotta take a piss.
And the star fell from heaven, burning as it were a lamp, and it fell upon the third part of the waters.
Jazz can be many people, but he's singing, and he just decided to be, you know, the voice of Satan. Or
That was an incredible album. I really, really thought that was an incredibly powerful album. Andy Gill from the Gang 4 produced it. Youth played on it. Dave Grohl was on drums.
I'm just doing the drums. They finished the whole record.
Oh, is that right? So it's
yeah, it's the first record I've ever done where the drums come last. Somewhat, I'd say.
Grohl's drumming was, funnily enough, it's almost like an amalgam of Martin Atkins and Big Paul's, because it has that technical proficiency that Atkins has and that sort of strangeness combined with the sheer wallop that Big Paul has.
Welding volume.
When I heard that Dave Grohl was playing drums, I thought, yeah, bollocks, another fucking Jazz and Geordie scam. But if anyone can do it, they can do it.
Hey, Dave! I think you've decided.
Here you go. Here you go. This one's for the god of fertility.
call up, get through and say, oh, you cunt, you owe us the fucking song that you made you, so I want you to play drums.
What about 80s? Look in the camera. Look in the camera. What the fuck are we going to do about 80s?
Dave Grohl did it for nothing. And, you know, I mean, was Nirvana influenced by Killing Joke? Absolutely.
We were all blown away. Someone said, like, here's that new Killing Joke. Straight into the CD. And it was what we listened to every night before we would go on stage. Every night we would listen to that fucking CD and those 6 songs. To the point where when we hit the stage, we were already sweating.
Don't mind if I leave.
Oi, oi. Bang. You tell him I'm an asteroid. Fuck you.
Well, a friend of mine was playing keyboards for Killing Joke. He started to get quite scared about, I think, touring with these guys. And he asked me about maybe taking over for a couple of tours here and there while he was doing other things, and decided to do it. Joined a band from Prague. I remember even being driven from the airport to the studio, and the person driving me was saying, "Are you sure you're ready for this?"
After the whole national anthem thing at the Rugby World Cup, things got pretty ugly. I got death threats from rednecks in New Zealand. Killing Joke had played in Prague very shortly after the revolution, and I wanted to return to Prague. After this, things happened at breakneck speed. The Prague Symphony Orchestra offered me the position of composer in residence.
Now working with the Prague Symphony Orchestra.
I ended up doing the Czechomore album Proměny, which went on to get 3 Grammys. A movie was made about it that's won the Carlsbad International Film Festival. And behind all the veneer of going to Prague because it's the Mecca for great composers like Mozart and Beethoven, was the fact that Prague, the Golden City, held the secrets of the mystery tradition, and at the heart of this city, the birth of the Rosicrucian tradition and the mysteries of life and death itself. Here at Obecny Dum, we are no more than 40 meters from the Black Madonna of Soletno. These Black Madonnas have curious properties. The Knights Templar situated them over underground streams, following similar principles of acupuncture. Like needles going into the veins of the body of the god, releases energy. All who live here, all their thoughts are amplified. Of course, the energy in these areas sends some people mad.
Blood was shed during the album, you know, I mean, not like, you know, fisticuffs and teacups.
No.
They fucked each other up at times during that record. The drummer nearly couldn't play drums anymore after one particular incident, you know. It was pretty dark.
I don't even play that album anymore because it's quite stressful to listen to.
I've never listened to it once.
It was an insane recording where everybody went absolutely crazy in Prague on every level.
There was drugs and alcohol and a lot of things in the mix at that time.
It was a non-stop binge pretty much for the first few months.
Line front or argumentative is Jazz Coleman and Geordie. That's it. Yeah, I think they have a self-destruct button.
Jazz Coleman?
Yeah.
The man they call Jazz Coleman, anyway. Oh, look. Paul left.
And Paul left, right before we went on tour with Hosannas. He went to join Ministry, you know, which caused a lot of friction in the band.
That's 3 times he's done this to me in 24 years. How do you think I feel? He cares nothing for friendship. He tried to fuck us. And more than that, he tried to take our keyboard player for the Ministry tour. He tried to kill Killing Joke. And if I ever see him, right, either I die or he dies.
And Paul had left a number of times. It was part of what had happened in Killing Joke, you know. So there was always an expectation that Paul would come back at some point.
Raven would return to that band after, you know, terrible things had happened between them. I remember him talking about the Outside the Gate album and how, you know, Jazz was obviously using Gematria, and Raven said, if you want a hit record, phone Stock Aitken and Walkman, don't phone the devil. And then they're playing together again on various Repressed Emotions.
It's a love-hate thing. It's not just it's family, basically. Once it's family, there's no escape from it. You know, it's there forever. And Raven was a late comer, but
Raven's death was such a shock to everyone. It's one of those things which makes everybody take stock and think about this thing which is Killing Joke.
When that obituary went out, it was published online or offline on just about every publication on the planet. We always knew the reach of the band, but I think we sort of looked at each other and thought, blimey, it's like people really do give a fuck about this band, and they really did give a fuck about Paul.
Oh, that's great, actually. Yeah, sure. My lecturing. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for the fucking nodding.
We used to have this phrase, her thing 1,000 miles an hour towards death, and together we'd both go, grinning as we go. Because, like, death was always around the corner and people were always passing, but I didn't kind of foresee the youngest of us going.
Paul lived his life like a pirate, so I think we'd all be lying if we said that, yes, it was a shock, but, you know, it wasn't.
In hindsight, it was not, you know, I mean, Paul lived the way he liked to live, you know.
But obviously it was sadder for the family and for his kids than it was for Paul. But, you know, you big boys, you know the game.
Looks just like you, mate.
What do I make of Paul? I miss him. Had some fucking, excuse me, I had some really beautiful times with him. In his own way, he had a really magnetic bass playing, Capricorn, walk all over you, but I'll love you way about him. I love the man.
Paul had died and we were in Geneva, First time that Jazz and Paul had seen each other for a large number of years at that point.
Killing Joke had been a pain in the pit of my stomach for years. Every year, without fail, something would come along that would just needle the hell out of me. It would be a new record, a new tour, a different drummer, this, that, and the other. It was exhausting me, because when I could stomach it, I'd listen to a record, and it was like nothing had changed, and I felt like I was on the record. The only thing I'd ever played, really, for was Killing Joke. You know, don't ask me to join a cover band. So went and pursued my other interests of art restoration, and I put down sticks. It was only when Raven died that I realized that I'd let it go. Once I'd let it go, it was no problem to see Jazz, and there we were. It was a funeral for our brother. Geordie said, well, do you fancy giving it another kick? And I said, yeah, sure. Not really taking it that seriously. And then, of course, they were serious.
Paul said to me, well, it took me 10 years of therapy to get over that lot, you know what I mean? And now you're asking me to come back in. On a very sad occasion, it's good that something good came out of it. Like,
it's the ritual, you see.
Yeah.
Seriously, you know, that's what they really believe. They believe that ritual that started them is what brings them back together and ultimately completes the circle.
Raven had always said to me, Jazz, if you get the chance of doing the original lineup, do it. So it felt like it was kind of, the whole thing was blessed by him. I felt his presence with me at this time. I felt him in the room, his presence.
I believe Absolute Descent are put in somewhere.
Where's
what
that
about
going?
something like Exit? 55-60, 65-70.
When Paul first joined, I thought he was deliberately putting sticks in the wheels of things. Like, you really almost couldn't do anything without Paul going, like, I'm not into that, or wait a minute, or slow down.
He suddenly had a realisation, you really are Killing Joke's drummer, aren't you?
Yeah, but the intensity of the four of their relationship, even if they were just mates that worked at a factory, is very full on.
Yeah.
And they've had massive effects, positively and negatively, on each other's lives. And Paul coming back into the fold, he was just trying to map out every little thing so he didn't get fucked. And I don't mean get fucked by the three of the band or by us two, but like in his head almost, so he didn't let himself go down one of the corridors that he'd been down before.
It's an absurd thing to have been away from a rock band for so long, to step back into this world. But I felt that we could see if we could find a common ground again to express the things that I need to express in life about the way things are going with the corporate elite, with the police state that we're living in. I want to hammer out the drums and scream with rage. And that's where Killing Joke started. And that's why I'm back, you know.
I remember asking Jazz what it was about Killing Joke and the music, and it kept people coming back. And Jazz saying, oh, you're talking about the fifth member. And I said, am I? And he said, yes. And he said, when I talk about my managers, people think I'm talking about somebody made of flesh and blood. That's not who I'm talking about. He was going, if you know the fifth member, then you will keep coming back to him or Killing Joke.
A fifth member being?
The Force. In a way, it made sense, because, you know, I'd been listening to this music since I was 14 years old, and I kept coming back.
Just about everybody in Killing Joke has been sent mad, has been burnt by this fire. And I've got to be honest, I was really angry and I felt that Paul had betrayed us. But then that can't explain the entirety of Paul and all the years I probably spent more time with him than any other human being on the planet. I prepared myself for Pradakshina, or Giri Valam, which is basically you walk around the 52 shrines of the Holy Mountain in South India. And I took Paul's ashes to the high priest at the temple, and they did this huge fire ritual to Agni. And then I got taken to this river, and I put the flowers in the river, the sacred river, and I let Paul's ashes go. And then I knew he got through, right the way to the other side. In 81, 82, when I became sort of inflamed by this idea, my colleagues were well aware of it, and everyone thought I was, of course, justifiably mad. Examining all the different references to the island, the reference to a southern island in Dante's Divine Comedy, Francis Bacon's New Atlantis, where he describes an island, again, in the Pacific that was survived a great combustion. The reference to an island in Crowley's Book of the Law. Then there is the Fulcanelli group in The Mystery of the Cathedrals, where they refer to the Northern Hemisphere being destroyed by fire. The island is imaginary, but periodically it has a reflex action on the Earth, and that island, Cythera, becomes very real, and the players in that dream become gods. And that is my reality. And everybody has to accept that a madman's dreams not only became true, but engulfed them also.
When I did with him, he said, I found Killing Joke Island, as the gatherers now call it.
And he said, Mum, I found it.
Geordie found the place, didn't he?
Because they're fishermen, they like to fish. But then, that's where Jeremy found his way, he said.
Choosing Island fortified. He said that several times, and he believed that island was here in New Zealand, and I believe that too. There's all sorts of legends about New Zealand being a part of that ancient motherland, and also legends about like volcanic activity and land rising again too. And some of these things I've checked out scientifically. So it's not a matter of if it's going to happen, it's a matter of when it's going to happen.
Where is it exactly?
I see the earth rising a second time. Out of the foam, fair and green. Down from the fells, fish to capture, wings to eagle, waters flow. There's something about the island that's absent in everything we've done with Killing Joke, in the same way that we've never done a single love song in Killing Joke. That Cythera almost gives it away when people just see you start raving mad. And then they're forced to accept what you dreamt was a reality. This is a victory.
2012, Mr. Jez Coleman, who leads all things Killing Joke.
I don't think it's the end of the world. I've got to be clear about this. We're told by all the indigenous cultures that there's going to be a huge upheaval. Economically, none of our cash is redeemed by gold. It doesn't add up. People are in debt and they're tired and they don't know how to feed their families. We cannot trust the food in the supermarkets. 2/3 of the world are on $1 a day and less, and this is increasing. We can see that the West has lost all moral authority. If there's going to be any legacy of Killing Joke, it's about self-educating.
Tout artiste est un initié qui sait que le point d'échange entre le monde spirituel et le nôtre, vous qui connaissez la Kabbale, se situe au niveau de Tiferet, cette beauté qui trône au centre de l'arbre des séphirotes. Jérémy Jazz Coleman, je vous fais chevalier dans l'ordre national des arts et des lettres.
The higher you go to the forces of light, the lower you must plunge to the forces of darkness simultaneously. The darkness that others have perceived is simply the individuated personality which others suppress, and we do not. We consciously release our dark sides within the music.
Christ, you're in your fucking 50s, you get your band back together, there's still people interested.
Raven aside, you know, we've survived. And that in itself is success.
Can we not abuse the fucking privilege? It's a fucking gift from the gods. It is. That's the only way I can look at it.
Killing Joke is my life, my world, everything. I saw him in the 80s, brought up with him in the 80s, and I brought my children tonight to see them, and I think I've converted them.
If you cut my soul in half and you went like that, it would sound like Killing Joke.
Give us your inspiration. Give us strength. Give us courage.
They once said it's the sound of the earth vomiting, and it kind of is, and more than that, because this was born in a very conscious way into being something more than entertainment. This is why the band stay absolutely true to everything they ever were, because they were born in ritual.
In the beginning of Killing Joke represented the feeling of having no control over your destiny. But over the years, Killing Joke became the laughter of knowing that one has total control over one's destiny.